And we keep learning. So folks that are using the daily, how many people like the carousel? Yeah, me neither. And we're learning about that. But it's something that we're moving along and we're trying new things. So we had this thing, you probably didn't even notice it, but every single day, a video team creates a brand new, here's what's in the daily today video. And it's been sort of buried in the navigation a little bit down. You have to click like 3 times to get to it. The team works really hard. It's like 4 people that put this thing together every day. And so, but since we're trying to keep learning, we've learned to maybe give it its own page instead of having it buried inside of some navigational structure. And so now we pull that out, and every day we have the daily briefing on a really nice, cleanly designed, simple page. We've also added in a recent version, not 1.1, but right before that, we now have a dynamic table of contents. Before we were actually handcrafting the table of contents every day. It was a ton of work, and it wasn't complete either, which I think was the bigger problem. And so now we have some additional nonlinear navigation tools available in addition to the typical swiping that we do. So our team, as a design group, we have a staff of about 50. That's not a small group. But the cool thing about it is that every one of us on this group has kind of a background that varies, that can probably add a few of these things together to create each of our people. So we have some guys that are straight up from news background, but they're also good at illustration or infographics. And we have some motion graphics guys that are also really good at doing interactive design. And so most people come from multiple backgrounds, and I think that's a really interesting, it's a dynamic, interesting group. Not a ton of news people, it's really probably on the smaller side, but then we have some super hotshot design guys that come from advertising, which puts a huge premium on design. And so we have these folks that are on our team as well. Our structure is kind of more like the advertising model of how an agency would be structured as opposed to how a newspaper would be structured also. We have the executive creative director, we have creative directors, we have art directors, we have senior designers, we have production designers, kind of in that setup. And so since our creative director comes from that world, that was the way that he chose to set up. His name's John Kilpatrick, great guy, tons of ideas, visionary dude. And so the tools that our team uses are pretty much the same things that everybody's using everywhere, except for our CMS. So I will be designing all day in Photoshop or Illustrator, InDesign, or maybe After Effects or Final Cut Pro, or doing stuff like that. And those are sort of the main tools that I think everybody's really using in the world. But then we do have a CMS, and so this is our custom CMS made by CrowdFusion. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be showing this, but whatever. It's just a bunch of text fields. Who cares, right? These things all look like this. None of them are sexy. I would way prefer just to sit in Photoshop all day, but not the deal. But it manages everything from content creation to like new articles to copy editing, status updates, feeds all the way through, and to building pages, which pages are essentially the thing that you see in the app. And here we have pages that were being built just a couple days ago. Or you can add and build a new page. We have components that you can add to each page. It's a little nerdy, but I thought you guys might get a kick out of looking at it. But so yeah, there's you can build new pages. So basically, you have like a text component that just was brought onto the thing. You could put the text into the field there, adjust the fonts, font size, very manual stuff. I've added a photo component now that you have some different functionality with different photos, as well as other interactive content. We have polls, charts, interactive graphics, video components, stuff like this. So we have components that get pulled into our CMS. You adjust all the attributes and features, and then you're testing it on an iPad at all times. And ultimately, you'll create something like this, like a page that would live in the app. And so here you would have essentially every text element is a separate component that's put in there. There's a background graphic as an image, and it starts out in Photoshop. This is something that I do every week. I partner up with a writer and do a different illustration based on a different musical artist. Bon Iver is awesome. Saw him play this summer. Great dude. So I had a lot of respect. I wanted to make it look really good. And So I will actually sketch this all out and draw it in Photoshop, and then build it, give it to a production designer who then would rebuild it again in the CMS. So it's like a two-step process. So I'm just jumping into that. But then if we run out of functionality and we want more, like I said earlier, we just add some HTML5 functionality if it goes beyond what our components are able to support. And things that we're learning as interactive designers is that we need to sort of keep pages simple and tell people what to do. I wish that wasn't the case always, but it turns out it is the case. I mean, the best interactive design is the kind where you don't have to have any instructions at all, right? But not always going to work out. So things we've done here are made a really simple page. The first one on the left, there's a big button that says sound off. It's sort of instructions for the user to click someplace. Same with the second one, tap photos for full screen. We tend to do lots of large scale, like instruction text with buttons and stuff like that on it. The third one is an example of something that didn't work quite as well, which is a small video buried into the timeline. It was probably like 200 pixels wide by 150 pixels tall. Less people are looking to click on that kind of stuff. The icons were too small. So my reason for showing you this is that we're just still iterating and trying to learn as designers how people are interacting with the content, which helps us make better decisions about the stories that we're trying to tell. And I don't have any analytics. We've started getting some. But we have done a couple small focus group tests that I've gotten some data from. People tend to like pretty clear instructions, it turns out. And this is sort of the tyranny of the swipe. I think this actually addresses some of the points that were made earlier. I think Steve was talking about the newspaper experience where you're going just through the paper and there's a beginning and there's an end to it. That's very much what the daily's about. The daily's not exactly a very nonlinear experience, although we do have nonlinear tools in there. We have maybe 6 different ways to navigate to the content. But it turns out that 88% of the time, people just keep swiping. They just want to go through it. Once in a while, they'll go backwards. And even though we have table of contents and other nonlinear nav, they're just going, they're not using it. They're just using the swipe across. So this is a pretty different model from more of a interactive nonlinear, sort of more like a website, like how the New York Times does their site. But it is really a magazine, and it has a beginning and an end. And people tend to just like to go through it that way, for better or for worse. We try to do some work with community engagement. We have all these viewers. I don't know if anyone saw our 9/11 coverage, but we essentially took comments and quotes from our readers and then created a video that incorporated some of their stories into the piece about where they were on 9/11, what their feelings were like, who they were interacting with. And I think that was a nice way for us to sort of harness content from our community and then bring it back to them in a way that was meaningful. And then we have some things that we're doing next. I don't know if anyone noticed, but we have an NFL preview app also available in the store where we're able to use our same engine, but then put new content into that engine. And we have something coming up soon. That's a gadget guide that will be coming out in the near future as well, using the same engine again. And other things that we're doing next. Maybe you heard we were part of the Facebook launch that happened last week with the Read Edge stuff. I learned about it at the same time most of you did. I wasn't involved in that team. And it's definitely an interesting new place for media and news to be going into. And I'm sure we all have tons of opinions about it, and we should talk about it later. But yeah, we were involved. I think one of the really cool things is that we don't really have a good web presence. And so our editors decided our web presence is going to actually be in Facebook. Nobody else is doing that. We'll see if it works. Our website's really more of just a blog, so why not create an archive of our work, of our stories, of our reporting in this brand new space that is new and original and has maybe some advantages to it. So that's, again, I didn't work on it, but I think it's an interesting place for the daily to be moving into, especially when we have this premium custom app as our primary focus of content. this is a place for other types of our content to be populating. And that's it for now, for me.